if you knew you were enough? What would your life look like? What would love look like? This is the Enough Factor broadcast, where we're redefining what makes you enough in life and in love. Now here's your host, Suzette Biernan. Hello, everybody. It's your life coach and relationship solutionist, Suzette Biernan, and welcome to another episode of the Enough Factor podcast. I so appreciate your joining us today. My Enough Warriors who tune in each week faithfully and feel supported by this podcast, a hearty hello. Also, those of you who are new to the podcast, I find it an honor that out of all the wonderful podcasts out there that you could be listening to right now, you decided to listen to this one. So a wholehearted thank you and a Southern girl, hey. As the name of the podcast suggests, it's about your enough factor. It's reminding some and pointing out to others that you are enough. And that as unique as your thumbprint, there are unique factors that support your enoughness. However, because of socialization and constant bombardment of other folks' definitions, you sometimes question if you are enough. And I'm here to not only tell you that you're enough, but to help you to discover why. And for that reason, this podcast seeks to amplify your voice, your value, and your vision. What I call the 3 critical factors of enoughness, so you can write your own definition on your own terms. Just imagine how much more rewarding and joyful and fulfilling your life would be if you felt your voice, which in short is like your thumbprint, your value, what makes you absolutely necessary, and your vision, the life you envision for yourself, were in alignment. Wow, right? If you check out my first episode, season 1, or check out my website, or connect with me at all on social media, what I hope you see is my genuine effort, though clumsy at times, to live in alignment with my voice, my value, and my vision. Nothing has really challenged my growth and commitment to this like the in-your-face, stark realities of race. After witnessing the videotaped death of George Floyd, I came face to face with my own complacency. Y'all, that was hard. It was so hard to look at myself in the mirror and admit my part. I thought that better was change, but it wasn't. And it was staring me in the face. I also had to admit that I put more effort into being polite, being appropriate, not upsetting anyone, trying to make everybody feel okay, and only expressing my true feelings with folks who look like me and agree with me and share a common culture. And so, as accountability would have it, life ushered me into a greater commitment to not be silent. And at first, I said what I thought, straight no chaser. I don't care who gets offended. And to be honest, I think I needed to do that. But now I realize that if honesty doesn't have grace, it's harsh and it contributes to the damage. And it is with this understanding that I've invited one of the most honest women I know, most heart-connected women, Deb Besinger, to have an awkward conversation with me. What makes this conversation unique is, as you can see, Deb is white, and of course I'm Black. We're both women, and as you know, Black and white women have a unique history interaction with each other. And to be honest, very few Black women truly trust white women and vice versa. I'm hoping that an honest, uncensored conversation can be had because we both know that if we don't get honest with one another, no real change will happen. And so I believe we are more committed to that. And I believe we have the maturity to work through our own difficulty as we seek to have the conversations others are afraid to have. That said, let me tell you more about Deb. Deb is a freelance writer and recognized dating expert whose advice has been featured in the Washington Post, the Huffington Post, and others. She is a now single mom to Andrew, Gaige, Bliss and True, and lives in Raleigh, North Carolina. Deborah has written for Scary Mommy, The Good Men Project, HuffPost Divorce, and more, as well as been a guest on the Steve Harvey Show about parenting Black teens on a special town hall on race and police. She is the author of her newly published memoir, Bound and Gagged by Christianity and the Sins That Set Me Free, which is about leaving fundamental Christianity and finding the religion of love. By day, Deborah is a certified life and love and dating coach and owner of Kiss of Perspective, and hosts weekly discussions about dating and relating and desires to help people grab more love out of life. Deborah is a collector of riveting conversations, lover of connected relationships, social justice seeker, intuitive question asker, coffee enthusiast, and armchair sociologist. Oh, girl, I love you. You can find her on most of the socials under Deborah Besinger or Kiss of Perspective, or her website, deborahbesinger.com, or www.kissofperspective.com, both of which I'll have in the show notes. So without further delay, give a wholehearted, enough factor welcome to Deb Besinger. Welcome, Deb.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. And scary, but nice.
I know. I tell you what, though, just reading your bio made my heart smile. And it only reinforced. You know, with this 61-year-old thing, sometimes words don't come out quite right. Okay, I digress. But anyway, reinforce what my heart knows. And if I can have this conversation with anybody, it would be you.
Well, thank you. So, I'll have to tell on us that when you asked, I said, oh, girl, this is going to be scary. But we both decided it was worthwhile to have it anyway.
I know. And I want to say that my intentions are not to change you. Not at all. It's just hoping that we can cultivate a safe space where we can be truly honest. Because truth be told, things are very unsafe right now. They are just very unsafe. But if we keep this ish, as a friend of mine calls it, if we keep this ish bottled up, it's not healthy for anybody. And we look with horror at what's been unfolding as people keep kind of blowing up like powder kegs because of all the things that they've suppressed over the years that have just come to an absolute boil. And so I thought about that, and I didn't think of any questions. This is going to be completely unscripted. The first part was scripted, you know, of course.
Sure.
But the conversation itself, I really wanted it to be honest and to be real. So I did copy and paste what I said to you. And I think that will kind of start us off. So I'm going to read what I said. And what I said, let's see if I can find it. Okay, right. What I said was, what I believe we can bring to the discussion is the fact that we talk real and less interviewee. I can ask you the hard questions and you can ask me. I think us talking about something that I heard often from Black women about white women is the experience of performative allyship. but them not standing strong with us when it really matters. That the very white women who say they want to be there for us take over as if we're inept to speak for ourselves as ourselves, or tell us what they think we should do instead of learning from us, or say one thing and vote another, oftentimes with whatever they feel will be in their best interest.
Yeah.
And then I said, that's what I hear. And to be honest, I experienced some of that after George Floyd's murder.
Yeah.
And then her answer was, ooh, scary topic. Mostly because even as much as I know and as hard as I try to listen, I still am constantly worried I will fuck it up.
Yep.
And I was like, isn't that it? We're so afraid that we're going to mess it up, and we don't want to. It's like I don't feel like we want to, but it's just hard.
But I think that keeps us quiet. And I definitely think if there's, one thing that I could defend about white women that don't speak up is they're so afraid to mess it up that they just don't say anything,
Yeah.
And I think, even my daughter and I were talking this morning about, the whole microaggression thing. And while, yes, we have to learn on that thing, you're just constantly afraid you're going to do it. And she, as a Black woman, a young Black woman, it's like, I still do it sometimes, there's just, but what you said early on, you said something about grace, and really, as I was thinking about the talk today, I thought the whole thing comes back to really, we just have to learn to have a lot of grace from each other. And it feels like a really hard ask because Black people have had to have a whole lot of grace for us for a long, long time. But I think then you have to really look at the intention of the person's heart. And if they're really trying to learn, and if they can hear you without being defensive, then that's when the grace is needed,
And that's why I had to look at myself in the mirror, because I'll be honest, for about a minute, I didn't want to talk to nobody white. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. After I saw what happened with George Floyd.
I don't always want to talk to white people either. Yeah.
It was overwhelming because I was having to deal with my own feelings. And then I felt bum rushed by white people. Even on social media, like everybody was trying so hard to help and to understand and to have, another conversation. And it was hard because I was trying to deal with my own, but yet I had cultivated friendships too with people of different races. And so it was just crazy for a minute. And then I had to, like I said, I had to look in the mirror at my own complacency and had to get to a place where I could have some integrity with the areas I felt like I had contributed in and failed in. And so I made this declaration, with the head bob and the finger wave, that I will no longer be silent. And it was tested because I was going to a chiropractor at the time who was white, and the chiropractic practice was white. There was not one Black person working in it. But of course I went because I felt like she could help me. But I did notice the whole George Floyd thing only magnified things that I had learned to dismiss. And so I felt like I was just kind of like an open wound. So I tried not to be, but so hard, but I still felt like somebody had just pulled the skin off of me. And I walked in there and I saw all these white people looking at me, and I just wanted to fall in the middle of the floor and just start crying. Because it was like, here I am again, the one, and I'm overwhelmed because I know you've been seeing the same thing on TV I've been seeing. And I know you're uncomfortable, but you're going to try to make me comfortable. And here we're going to go into another thing that's going to make me have to be silent because I'm trying to be polite and I'm trying to be kind, which is a added pressure on top of everything to try to act like I'm okay when I'm not. And so I just said, bump this. And so when she asked me, the typical, hi, how are you? Mm-hmm. And I actually said, I'm not good.
Good for you.
But then she said, really? What's wrong? And I'm just like, and I just was honest. I told her the truth about it. And she said, no, be honest with me. Be honest with me. She said, because, I'm white and I'm privileged. I know I am. She said, but you know what? I don't offend easy. And I know I got faults and everything. And I want you to feel safe when you come in here.
Yeah.
But then, Deb, this is the thing. I feel like that's a setup, though. Because I was honest, and you know me, I'm not a mean-spirited person, but I am an honest person. And so I was like, to be honest with you, with this whole George Floyd thing and race relations right now, I feel really inflamed. I feel infuriated. I feel awkward and exposed. Sitting here, I want to cry. And I can't stop myself. Yeah. I cried the whole time. I said, I can't stop myself. And you know what? I don't want to. As uncomfortable as it feels, I feel like I deserve to be okay with how I feel without being worried about how you feel. Because I've had a lifetime of being worried about how you feel and what repercussions they're going to be for me as a result of how you feel. And she seemed okay in the moment. But I started feeling like the more I came, the energy changed. And I said, that's the reason why it's hard to have this conversation. Because it's like when I'm honest and stand in my true feelings, which I have a right to, you become uncomfortable. And now I have to be silent because of your being uncomfortable. And it just
feels
have
to be silent?
Not really. I don't have to be. Sometimes it just becomes more wounding, to be honest, and to see you slowly backing away. And then it becomes
hurtful.
Yeah, and then it becomes, I come and get adjusted, but because you backed away when you told me you could handle it, it makes me not trust you as much. And so because I don't trust you, then I'm not going to be vulnerable with you. So when you ask me how I'm doing, I'm like, hanging in there.
Right.
And that's it.
You go through everything. So, I mean, I definitely, in the wake of the George Floyd thing, even though I'm a white person, I was witnessing my daughter in particular just going through. I never really believed in generational trauma or understood it. It wasn't that I definitely didn't believe in it. I just was kind of like, I don't know how much it really is real and does it matter. But, knowing that she was raised in, mostly white spaces and yet was so traumatized, by what she saw, which we've always been very aware of all the big things. And when she was interviewed on Steve Harvey, she said, and Steve actually, they edited this out, but he literally fell on the floor when she said this to be all dramatic and funny. But she said, I'm afraid to read that someone will think I'm suspicious and maybe try to hurt me, or cops will hurt me, or, confront me. And that was in 2016. And then Ahmaud Arbery was literally killed for running down the street, and she was 15, I think. Yeah, 15 when we did Steve Harvey. So, she's always been so very much in tune with everything. And then George Floyd got killed and everything. I just saw just such trauma for her. And I felt traumatized by it too, as hopefully most people did to some degree. But just watching her, I was not okay. And even my sons dealt with it very differently and definitely more, stoically, but still affected. Mm-hmm. And I was just, because as a parent, when you see your kid really hurting, it's a very helpless feeling, of course. And of course you can only do so much. They have to go through it, right? You can't do all of it for them. So I was, not that my pain was any greater than hers. But I was definitely dealing with my own pain, and I had to let go of one really, really key relationship of mine who just was like, didn't feel a responsibility to the relationship that we had created together, she and I, this friend, to stand in the gap with me, even though, she would say she's an ally. She would say she's an anti-racist, but she still just could not get there for me and kept wanting things from me, in the role that we normally would have. And when I had nothing left to give, because I'm literally both myself traumatized and trying to support my children who are traumatized, I just had to let that relationship go. And that's hard. It's hard when it's someone you really care about, or your chiropractor you really like, because you don't have the energy to go find another one, But I think, and I didn't have the energy to do other things. My life and my friendship circle has gotten so much smaller. And really, and COVID is partly to do with that, because we're, you're not constantly bringing new people into your life in the way you would if you were out. But, my relationship circle has gotten so much smaller because I don't feel safe with most people anymore. After last Wednesday, which for anyone listening, because I know you'll listen to this in the future, last Wednesday was January 6th. I'm like, I don't know who to trust anymore, Yeah.
And Deb, you're in a unique situation because you are a white woman and your children are Black children, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I know for our listeners, they're probably curious, like, well, why would she want to, adopt Black kids? That's, it becomes one of those things where it's like, and I'm sure listeners are like, well, didn't she know what she was getting into? Or, or is she kind of like Madonna and some of these other people that is almost like, okay, my philanthropic thing, I'm going to adopt the child of another race and I'm going to make their life better. And it's like, what you're describing is like, when they're little, but when they get older, when they walk out that door, nobody's going to know they have a white mama.
It's so
nobody's going to know.
My daughter and I were just talking about that last week, that when my boys' jawlines grew in, when their jawline grew in, the level of anxiety you have to have every time they walk out the door rapidly changes. The way even my white friends look at them changes. Mm-hmm. And, and back to your maybe question you're asking for your listener about why my oldest son died when he was 6 years old. So he would be 25 now. Mm. So we were doing it before it sort of became this more trendy thing. And I'm not saying that to excuse us. It was more of a, we were adopting through the state. They said, what are you open to? And we were open to most everything. Most of our kids had some special needs when we got them, or currently have some issues. And so it wasn't the white savior thing. In fact, people would tell me all the time, you're such a saint, or you rescued them. And I'm like, who is to say that they would not be better off in their own culture, in their own family. That is just so ridiculously a racist statement. And honestly, when I first started hearing it, I wouldn't call it out as brashly as I probably would now. But although I haven't had anybody say that to me in quite a while, but who's to say that just because their parent, birth moms were in a weird situation. None of my birth moms were 16-year-old pregnant girls. They all had other children. All 4 of them had other children. Who's to say? That's just ridiculous. So, and I came from my father was a huge racist, and I've tried to think about what made me okay with that, or what made me not end up being more like him. My mother was not a racist, but she was quietly complicit to his racism. She wouldn't necessarily call him out for things. And so, but I grew up in a small Baptist church where they escorted Black people out if they showed up for the service. Really? I saw that happen. My dad was one of the people that escorted them out, and my dad died when I was 18. So before I adopted, and my mom and I talked a lot about how he would have felt about my decision. And she said he would have come around to it. And I'm like, I don't know. You know better than me, maybe. But
it's like there's a difference in coming around to the idea of it versus the reality of it.
That's true. And it's easy to love a cute little Black baby compared to, a Black young man who is, just villainized by the simple being, just being. So.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Honest, no judgment. When you walk down the street and you see older Black kids walking towards you, does it make your heart kind of race just a little bit?
It definitely used to. I definitely, when, my kids were younger, I was definitely going to be locking my door if I saw someone in a parking lot, and maybe I might, and I don't know, maybe I wouldn't have had it been a white teenager, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or a young man. It's hard to know for sure, but I mean, I definitely, in fact, I try extra hard not to do these things now. Like even if I'm at the store, I always try to pick a person of color to go through their line. I will always pick the white person last, because I know there are other people there who are not going to pick the Black person, because of their own issues. So I probably try harder. And honestly, my daughter and I talk about it all the time. Like, the most scary people out there right now, middle-aged white men. That's who I'm afraid of more right now than anyone else. And even though, let me just clarify, not all middle-aged white men are bad. But
we have to say that.
Yes. Yeah. But I'm definitely it's going to take me a lot longer to trust someone like that until I know their character. But
yeah, I think for me, when I saw the people storming the Capitol, honestly, I wasn't surprised, because I had been reading the tea leaves all along. And I think sometimes people look at each incident as if it's an isolated incident. But if you connect the dots back, everybody's like, how do we get to this? How do we get to this? And I'm thinking, at first I said, well, this happened back in 2016, during the presidential shocker. But then I'm like, no, it went back further than this. I said, if I really want to be completely honest and reverse engineer this thing, For me, it started the day people that looked like me were brought here.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Where there was this aspiration. It's almost like there's a really dark past that America has. They try to gussy up and spit shine and make it look almost honorable. But the truth is, America has never lived up to its promise.
That's right.
It started out wrong. And
we say, people saying this is not us. Oh, I'm sorry. I beg to differ. This is who we have always been. Yeah, but let me ask you.
We were kind of born into this, whether we like it or not,
Right. Let me ask you this, because in 2016, when I was jumping up and down about the fact that we were very close to, electing this person who, wore his hatred of all different kinds of people proudly on his sleeve. Mm-hmm. I had some Black friends say, well, maybe this is good because at least we know who our enemies are now. And to some degree, I thought, okay, that's fair. However, 4 years later, I don't know if I don't remember who said that to me. I just remember it was several times I heard it. I wonder if people feel the same way. Like, does it feel better when it's hidden, or does it? It feels terrible all the time. I get that.
I think for most of the people that I've been around, and I know there's still outliers. There's Candace Owens. There are other people that have different viewpoints. Coming from a different pain point. Yeah. Same pain, just processed differently, right? But I think the frustration for me personally, and for those around me that I've had conversations with, is we've been dealing with this all the time.
Yeah.
In some situations, maybe it's not been as overt or as blatant, but it's still been there.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and I think it's more for the younger generation, because a lot of the people in the younger generation have grown up in a different world. And it's easy for them to say, why y'all keep bringing that up? We're so over that now. We could move on if y'all stop having all these Black movies with folks being slaves in them. It's like you start hearing things like that from kids who have grown up on the other side, or in the better, right? In the better.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, partially why I think some people say it's good now, because it's like, we already knew.
Yeah. Well,
we were already experiencing this to some degree.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
But now for the younger generations that thought we have overcome, we can all go to the same schools. We can even interracially marry.
Right.
I can walk into this place. I can walk into that place. My daddy's just as rich as your daddy. I can go to Harvard now. But you're thinking that just because it's better means real change has happened. And so I think for people who have been maybe seduced by that, hearing, well, at least now you see it. Now we're not arguing over it. Now you see the very thing that we've been talking about, and even not just hearing our own, but hearing white people saying, when y'all gonna get over this?
Right. Yes.
Like, look, I mean, come on.
Right.
When y'all gonna get over this?
When everyone's treated exactly the same all the time in all the spaces. and no other thing will do.
No.
You know, it just won't. But, you know, I do think a lot of, you know, what was so profound about George Floyd's death is so many white people were like, oh, wait, this is what y'all been talking about. And, you know, and so and even, you know, the way that obviously there's lots more to the story about the insurrection than we currently know, you know, 8 days later or whatever. But you know, the fact that they were just so ill prepared for it because they trusted the fact that white people would not be as big of a threat in some way, despite the fact that there's tons of evidence that white people are out to kill certain people. You know, so, you know, it's still really, really rampant. My daughter and I often, she's a student at a small liberal arts college, and you know, they've had a little reckoning of their own on that campus. You know, it's not a cheap school. There's a diverse population, but not enough representation for sure. And you know, there's been some rather obvious missteps by, you know, professors who are our age. And I keep telling her, you know, there is that balance of grace of, you know, if they're trying, you have to let them mess up a little bit. You know, it's just like parenting. You have to let them kind of mess up and learn, and they're not going to be able to break down and deconstruct all that bias. I, as a person who has adopted Black children, will be doing this work until the day I die. It is in there. It still catches me by surprise. I had a friend that gathered up some Black women she knew and some white women who wanted to be, you know, allies, but knew nothing. This was probably about a month after George Floyd. And I was, you know, the somewhere in the middle bridge. And one of the Black women said there is really the main thing I remember from that conversation. And she was trying to tell the other new to the anti-racism, you know, group, give them some reassurance. And she just said, we've been doing this our whole lives. You're new to it. And you're going to make some mistakes. And that's okay, as long as you keep doing the work, you know? And I think that really is the most important thing. The moment you think you've done it all and you'll never do anything racist again, that's a bad place to be. So, like, I definitely think white women that are doing the work should make it a practice to amplify Black voices instead of their own. But I will say, there is a space for white allies to use their own voice, because the people that are the ones that need the most reaching are not even they're not ready to hear from anybody but white women. You know what I mean? They've got to hear it from white women first, and then they can hear it from Black women. You see what I'm saying? So I think I
do. It's something that Brene Brown did a Netflix.
Yeah.
And she said something, and she said, the reason I'm saying is because I'm white and I can say it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And because a Black person could never say that.
It does give you safe. It creates a safe space for you to be heard. But there are far too many who never amplify the Black voice and just keep their voice. You know, it's kind of like mansplaining. Let me white-splain to you or something. And so I think there's definitely a fine line. But I think that, you know, like before we went on Steve Harvey, what preempted it was I had written an article in the wake of Ferguson that went viral. It's the only time I had an article go viral. But, you know, I was talking about how one thing I mentioned in there is how shocked my white mom friends were that I had to have the conversation with my kids about, you know, what you do when you get pulled over by a cop. because, you know, for them, cops are friendly and they're your helper, and that's who you look for when you're in trouble. And why would they ever bring you harm? And they were so shocked to know that. Of course, now they've seen lots more examples of why that needs to be. So it's probably not shocking to too many anymore. But you know, in 2016, that was still a really relatively new concept with, you know, that white moms didn't know that, you know, Black people had to do that, or that Black people couldn't trust cops. But I think if a Black person was telling them that, they wouldn't have believed it. And you know, in the same way.
And I think that's been the frustration for a lot of Black people. We've been saying this stuff for years.
Right.
And nobody has believed us. And I feel like part of the magnification of it has been because we weren't believed. And it didn't have to come to such a tragic,
right,
you know, tragic thing. But I guess I do hear what you're saying. I think one of the things that is hard for me personally, though, and I know there's certain things that white people can say that Black people can, you know, and the same thing, vice versa. There's certain things that I could say to people so that part sure. I can get. Yeah. But the part that becomes hard for me is when somebody, white or white woman, says, or not even what they say, but remember when all the protests were going on during the summer?
All right.
And in order for Black people to not be treated unfairly in the protests, you had white grandmas form a link in front of them.
Yeah.
So that they wouldn't get harmed.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably made those white grandmamas feel so good. But as a Black person, my thing is, I want to be regarded as valuable on my own recognizance. I don't want you to have to clear the way for me. And I know that might be where we are right now.
Right.
But I could never be comfortable in being taken care of by a white person because history says
you can't trust us. Yeah.
No, history says the white slave had to look to the white master to take care of her, to take care of us. You take care of us by giving us this. My white master take good care of me. So it's not liberating.
Right.
For a Black person, for white people to have to take care of, to have to do that. No, it's like, no, real transformation is changing the view of us so that you can see value in us and I can hold my own and be respected on my own. I'm like, but I don't want to have to take you with me everywhere I go. You know, I'm not a child. And so for me as a 61-year-old Black woman, fully formed, this is pretty much it.
Right.
It's like, no, it hurts my pride to need somebody else to validate me, to justify me, to make me palatable.
I hear you. And I really have not thought about these things before. So it's good to work through it. But I do wonder, it doesn't feel like we're there yet.
Yeah, that's the frustration.
And so what has to happen in between to make it where you can? Like I want you to be able to be safe, but I mean, my younger son has some special health issues, and we've had a nurse who is from Zimbabwe with us for 3 years. We had to let her go because of COVID, but and so we just have no nursing right now. But she had a little fender bender when she was out picking up some medication or something, and nearby. And this was, after a lot of police stuff had happened, even here locally. And so, I said to her, I'm coming. And I came to where she was, and I didn't end up getting out of my car. but I was there just in case, because not only is she Black, she has an accent, and so she's not from, she's also an immigrant. And so I just was like, I just want to be there in case I need to get out. And maybe that's the way to do it, to just stand by. But I feel sure that the women, for the most part, that stood in that line protecting, I don't think most of them had malice in their heart. I mean, or were doing it just so they could look good or feel good about themselves. I feel sure that at least a number of them felt like they were trying to make a statement that was in aid for Black people. And it's good to hear that that's not what Black people want, because I'm sure we're making a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, I saw their hearts, and I knew they were responding from a good place. I knew that. Mm-hmm. It just didn't change that cry inside of me for people to make their decision about me based on me. And I think that's the cry of all of us.
So unfair.
Don't we all want to be loved for who we are?
Absolutely.
And
so it's so unfair. I do think I did want to talk about this little thing of, and it's a danger I see in lots of spaces, and the political space, that we're not very good at welcoming people who are awakening.
Oh.
But if we don't get better at it, I don't know that things are going to change.
Oh, man. Talk more about it, because I felt the resonance in my spirit, but I want to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying.
I think it's easiest to do with politics, really. And I will admit that, I was very happy on January 6th to see no one on my friends list defending what was going on, because I've already gotten rid of all those people, right? So I think that, like I've even heard, I don't know if you're familiar with the Lincoln Project, but I've heard some people say against them, well, they built the system, so I don't have any respect for them. And they did, but they are working tirelessly to dismantle it. And if we can't appreciate that, it's one thing to say, I was wrong, I voted for him twice, and I shouldn't have. And that be the end of it, right? That's one thing. And those people, I might let you in here, but I'm going to be watching what you're going to be doing in the next few years. You know what I mean? But with the people that are, actively, they have totally switched gears and are working hard to point out not only what they did by taking responsibility for it and changing it, but, also trying to help other people understand it.
Oh, yeah.
We have to welcome those people. And as we see, all that ugliness that really, really has gotten uncovered in the last, couple of weeks. I will say the only people that I did see defend it, I had two different friends who happened to know somebody that was there, but never went into the Capitol. They were there as part of the peaceful thing. And so they were trying to discredit the whole thing by saying, well, it wasn't all like that. Not everybody was there. And I'm like, yeah, but we have to be a both and, we have to understand that we can have two things existing in the same space, and one be wrong and one be right, or both be wrong and both be right. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't mean that, everything is all this way or all that way. And so I feel like if we don't welcome the people that are awakening, we're never going to have more people that are woke.
Yeah. And if we don't call a thing, because there is that awakening piece, but there's also calling a thing. And I'll give an example of it. To me, what makes this call for unity that you're hearing, makes me want to stick my middle finger down my throat and gag, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard for me to get with you if I know you were part of what happened. And now you don't want to do the hard work. You don't want to man up. You don't want to do you don't want to do what's going to be uncomfortable for you.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
it's like again, performative allyship. Oh, there will be no unity if we don't come together. And it's like, wait, but you were part of the divisive engine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now, because you don't want to do the hard thing, because you don't want to do the right thing, because you don't want to risk your political career or your cred or deal with possible consequences, now you want to act like the shit ain't on the floor.
Yeah.
And let's just join hands and sing Kumbaya and go from this moment dancing into it don't work that way.
Yeah.
And to me, it seems very disingenuous. So that's what accountability, there's got to be, even in the baby steps, even in all that, there still has to be the real conversation. So what I love about the Lincoln Project, while we may differ in policy, emphasis in policy, because I align with the Democratic Party because they're 80% of what they stand for resonates with me.
Right.
But there's still a 20% that I'm like, but the Republicans got a point with that. So I'm not completely 100%
right
without reaching across the aisle or without saying, if the truth be told, I do kind of share that view,
right.
So while we may disagree on this extreme socialism, what they think is extreme socialism, I'm like, well, that's survival to me. So, we're going to disagree.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But what I like about them and have grown to love about them is beyond the policy. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was so excited about having a conversation with you, though my knees were knocking, was there is an integrity there, though. That, and the integrity piece is, I still believe what I still believe. I still have a conservative Republican ideology that still resonates with me, and I will go toe to toe, tooth and nail, on policy. But I answer to a higher code of ethics, a higher code of humanity, a higher code of right and wrong.
Yeah.
That I have to take a step back and say, but this right here,
right,
I have to draw the line. And if it means I lose some friends, if it means I'm not invited to the barbecue,
right,
if it means I'm not the godfather to your child no more, if it means you get quiet when I walk up, if it means I might not be in line for the political promotion that I would have been otherwise, excuse me, I still have to stand in the integrity that this moment is requiring.
Right.
And
that's how you sleep at night.
Excuse me.
I don't know how people can disassociate those soul level values with policy, I guess. But I just don't know how some of these people sleep at night. I really don't. It's like your integrity and your authenticity at the end of the day are all you have, and they're worth fighting. They're worth standing up for, and I definitely think this year of social isolation has been some of that for me too. And then the whole racial justice movement, the fact we had an election, all of that all in one time and space has really, it should have made all of us find our authenticity and stand on our integrity. If nothing, this is really the trial, right? The trial of all trials. Over and over again, you're being tested on, do you believe in science? Do you believe in social equity? Do you believe in that your politics should align with your values? We really have been called to figure these things out.
I totally agree. And I just feel like, oh gosh, I think it's about time for us to bring the conversation to a close, right. But I definitely hope that you and I will continue to have the real conversations, and I'm hoping that in my awkwardness, in my humanity, in my sometimes cussing, I can't be gracious right now. I know you didn't do it, but right. and I don't want to put all white people in the same boat, but right now I'm struggling here, that somehow that we can give each other grace. And it might be you feeling that about Black people because we're not perfect, not at all.
Yeah.
We're not perfect at all. There are family members and people I'm around all the time. And I think sometimes it comes across like, because we are the ones that have been oppressed, or we're the ones that have had so many things happen to us over these centuries, that it gives us a pass when we do things that are not right either. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, because again, like you said, integrity dictates that we have the hard conversations and admit to our own faults and failings. And I admit to you that sometimes I strive to see the humanity behind people who have white skin. When I was younger, there was no striving, because when I grew up with white people being kind to me for the most part, until school desegregation. That was when my dad had to walk us into the building and people were jeering, but I was too young to really understand it all. Oh. But inside that school building, I ruled, honey. It was like I was the only Black person in my classroom, but I was the most popular kid in my grade because I did not feel inferior because my skin was different. I really did not. I didn't have all these, should I say it? Should I not say it? How should I act? How should I be? So I was treated well from my standpoint. Now, I don't know what my mom and daddy had to do in the principal's office to ensure that I was, but my experience of white people growing up was positive for the most part.
When did it change?
I think it changed. I think it changed the older I got. When I left Kinston, went to college, and started realizing that there were some things that still existed. I was just too young to notice it. Mm-hmm. When I look back, I was like, oh, so it was the color of my skin. That was the reason why when I went to the pediatrician, we had to sit in a room separate from the white kids.
Wow, I never even knew that.
And I had to wait until after all of them were seen, no matter how sick I was. I had to wait till all of them were seen, then the doctor would see me. And I had to realize there was this cute little train that used to be in the pediatric room. All the kids would press our noses against to watch the train go. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't go in and see the train when white people were in there. I didn't understand it. So it's like you get older and you start experiencing some things and you start hearing more things. Then you look back and you go, oh, that's why.
Mm.
And I'll be sitting there like fever, 103, 104, burning up, wondering, when the doctor go see me, mama? When the doctor go see me, mama?
Wow.
And I could have died in there, but the doctor was not going to let me skip in front of somebody white. And it didn't matter if they just came in. It didn't matter how long I had been waiting. So as you get older, and then you have your jobs and you know that you're more qualified than the other person,
right?
But then the other person gets it.
Yeah.
And then when you ask, you're looked at like, what? You get the, like, you asking me? Who are you to ask me? Who are you to hold me accountable? You should be happy I even interviewed you. You get that kind of look. I never forget, I was sitting, and I guess I have a Southern drawl because I've been in the South all my life. But I never forget, I was administrative specialist at the sales training department. And I was the person responsible for helping set up these meetings, these training meetings with our sales force and with business partners and so forth. And I remember this man who had never seen me, he said, "You have got the most wonderful Southern drawl. I cannot wait to meet you." And I remember thinking to myself, boy, is he going to get a surprise? I remember thinking it, but I just kind of played along. And I was like, yeah, I can't wait to meet you either. When he walked in and he looked around, because I was the only Black person in the whole office. I was the only Black person in an office full of blue-eyed blondes.
For a reason.
Truly, God has a sense of humor, I think. Right. Truly, God has a sense of humor. And so I'm sitting there, and he's like, and I'm like, "May I help you, sir?" He said, "Well, I'm not sure. I'm looking for this wonderful young woman who helped coordinate this thing for me." And he's looking around, and I said, "Oh, that would be me." Honey, I think if his dentures had not been in tightly, they would have fallen out of his mouth on my teeth.
That's hilarious.
So it's those kinds of things that kind of, and you start noticing the difference in how people respond to you, or you can walk into a place with a white friend and they'll talk to the white friend first before you. Or like when I had my 50th birthday party and I invited all friends. I had white friends there and everything. And it was interesting because some of my white friends, it was a white guy, his wife came, and they were my friends. They were sitting across from me. And it was interesting because my Black friends did not know that everybody was kind of seeing my rainbow of friendships, And I never forget, one of my white friends later, when I got together with he and his wife, he was talking about, everybody kept assuming that I was your boss. Oof. My Black friends assumed he was my boss, and he was really my coworker. Wow. But they assumed it. So there's a lot of stuff to work through, but I think it starts with the heart of people. I believe genuineness recognizes genuineness. Yeah. And I give you the grace to get it wrong. I do. I feel like I can say to you, okay, Deb, but I want to be here for you, but right now I'm kind of dealing with my own stuff. So just hold my hand cyberly. I look forward to the day that you can hold my hand really, but it's just kind of like right. Just that we have a space where we can be honest in the space and feel our way into the greater support of each other when it's hard. Yeah.
I think you just have to be willing. I mean, last night I posted Brene Brown's response to the recent stuff. Her podcast came out yesterday or Wednesday, and I just got to listen to it yesterday, and I posted it last night. But I made a comment, I kind of said, please, please, please listen to this, because she talks about the fact that we're dehumanizing people, and that is part of the problem. And it was really, really eye-opening and hard to hear, and also comforting. But I said, Brene Brown is my spirit animal. That's a common thing. And one of my friends said, I know you didn't mean that in the way that, but that's a cultural appropriation for Native Americans. And I was like, it is? I had no idea. And she said, I started to, because I've used that a million times. And I just thought of it more in the spiritual world of like when a feather falls from the sky randomly, what does that mean? Is more of the thing. And so I changed it to hero, but she said in her comment, she said, I was going to just message you privately, but I knew that you'd be able to hear it and that other people might learn about that too. Okay. And I thought, and I said, oh, I'm glad you did. And of course I edited it, but they could still see that she had what it originally said, in the comments. But, that's never easy to be told, oh, you did that. But she did it the right way. And that she said, I know you didn't, you might not know this, and because I know you wouldn't be doing this intentionally. Right. Mm-hmm. But it's also about how you receive it, and I could have deleted her comment. I didn't, I could have gotten upset. I didn't. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, but like that's how you're doing the work, is when you don't immediately be like, go into the shame reel and be like, oh, it's like, oh, okay, I learned something, and maybe someone else did too. And that's cool. And that's the only way we're going to get through this stuff.
Yeah, because somebody I was talking to them about my husband, and they said, oh yeah, I just love y'all. Y'all are my spirit couple. And so yeah. I thought of it as positive, but you brought up a great point. And I have to be honest with you, Deb, I'm a work in progress. I thought I was evolved, girl. I thought I was ready. Like, what? I don't want to die, but when I die, I'm going to high five Jesus and shimmy. I mean, I thought I was just at that particular point of evolution.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I'm having to deal with how triggered I can get about things, and the work that I know that I've done that helps me is I'm able to say, Suzette, you're triggered. Mm-hmm. And I know when I feel triggered, I feel like I'm right. God knows I feel like I'm right. And I can put together a case that would acquit any client of mine in my own head, in my own imagination. Yeah. But then I have to be humble enough to know you're triggered. Mm-hmm. So if you're triggered, 9 times out of 10, you're wrong. Mm. And so I'm having to figure out, well, what is the you're wrong part? Yeah. It's not that I'm wrong for being triggered. I have no control over that. But I can't make that other person responsible for me being triggered, especially if I believe that relationships hold up a mirror. So it's like, so what is this showing me about me? What's unresolved in me? Mm-hmm. And I've had to take several seats and figure it out in a way that's authentic. Because then it's easier to say, well, if I'm wrong, they're right, then I'm going to completely go to their side. But it still would cause resentment in something inside of me if I abandon the real part of me that's behind all this. So it's like, okay, if you weren't triggered, how would you respond? Or is there another possibility for why she said what she said? Mm-hmm. Is there possibly, I know it's hard for you to figure it out, Susan, because right now you are inflamed. Yeah. But is there possibly another explanation possibly another motive, possibly. And I have to tell my ego, damn it, yeah. I don't want to, but yeah, maybe so. And it's like, well, then let's make the effort to shift your energy from feeling offended by it or ruffled by it to the possibility. Can you feel grace for the other possibility? And if I can say, okay, it's going to take me a minute, but I'm getting there. I'll keep saying it. And then when I feel grace for the other possibility, it's like, now what would your response be?
Yeah.
And when I do it that way, I'm allowing the truest me, the more powerful me, to address it. Though I know the triggered me is sitting over in the corner, glaring.
Yeah. Right.
But I don't feel like I've betrayed me. Because my ego is not me. So if I'm going to betray anybody, I don't want to betray the real me.
Right.
So I'm not good at it. I've had 2 situations that have hit me between the eyes a couple of days ago, and I'm still finding my way.
Yeah.
But it's becoming my practice.
Yeah.
To try to do that.
Yeah, I think for me in those moments, what I try to do is ask them to explain more without making assumptions, because the group I ran, I know we need to tie up, so I'll try to be quick, but the group I ran.
I'll edit, girl. I'll be, if it has to be a part 1, part 2, we'll make it that.
All right. So I run this, before COVID, ran this meetup group in my home, and we came to realize one day that we were using the same words, but they meant different things to us. And so we did another meeting, and we did it a couple times, where I had a list of words, and everybody had notepads, and I would call out a word and say, what does that mean for you? And everyone would write it down, and they'd put it in a bucket, and we'd pass the bucket back around, and you would read whichever one you pulled out. And while there were, several familiar themes under each word, none of the definitions in a room full of, 15 to 20 people were exactly the same. And that has been such a big lesson for me, to just not assume that even when someone says love, that they mean the same thing I do. Or if they say infidelity, their line of infidelity may be different than mine, and we make so many assumptions. So when I'm kind of in that place of where I'm like, I really want to make sure before I let myself go off on the deep end is to make sure I really understand by asking them to say more. And then this other lesson, and really it's a friend of mine who posts amazing things, and we were friends back in Memphis when our babies were little, but haven't seen each other in person in, I don't know, 15 years, probably at least. But she is the one that talks so much about the concept of both and so sometimes even when you're triggered about something, both things can be true, and both things can be true for each of you, because our own lens is what we see everything through. And, I can't, and I do think, and this may seem like a bunny trail, but that's okay. One thing I committed to doing before this last election, even before the primary, was I was going to listen to Black women, because Black women have carried the politics of this country, especially the Democratic Party, for a long time without anyone realizing that's who we were supposed to be listening to. And, so I think I always have to take a step back and say, even though what they're saying is different from my own experience, it is 100% true for them. And to just assume that it is their truth, and to then challenge myself on what I think about those things, And sometimes both things can be true. And sometimes I can't. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say there's not hard lines of things that need to be tolerated and not tolerated. But I think we've just got to find a way to build more bridges. And sometimes that comes to that.
And that's so true of us both as coaches. We are the bridge. So we're kind of used to, whether it's a guy, girl, trying to figure out how to be in an intimate relationship or whatever. And usually as coaches, we have to be the bridge, either with one, the other, or both. And in order for you to be the bridge, you have to be able to understand both points of view and understand it within the context of how women see things, how men see things. Because otherwise, if you can only see it one way, you can't be a bridge.
Well, then you make them an enemy too.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why having this conversation with you was so cool. Because I've had a chance to see you in action, my friend, and see you have this very quiet, matter-of-fact way of just ushering things and being thoughtful, but yet direct. And I love it. It's an art that I feel like in your challenging yourself to grow has been honed in that, and I love that.
It's a process.
Yeah, girl, you already see how I am.
It's a process.
It's a process.
Well, I appreciate you providing opportunities.
Yeah,
I mean, having a podcast is brave, and having hard conversations is even braver. So.
Thank you. I know I'm going to listen back to this, and I just believe there were certain things that you said that are going to make me better, make me a better human. And I appreciate it.
You gave me some things to think about too.
So listeners, we'd love to hear from you. Yeah. So please leave comments and connect with us on social media. The links will be in the show notes, like I said. I only ask that you be kind. I'm not asking you to be polite. I'm not asking you to be nice. But kind meaning to be present, to be authentic, to be honest without throwing shade or having a mean-spirited intent. So that's kind. And if you can do that, we welcome your comments, even if it's hard to read. And as I leave you today, I want you to know, and I want you to feel it in the deepest parts of you that may question whether you're enough or not. I want you to know that you are worthy, you are worth it, you are more than enough. Bye. You have just listened to the Enough Factor podcast with your host, Suzette Vernard. To get notified of new episodes or to dig deeper into today's topic, become a subscriber. And while you're at it, tell us how we're doing and what topics you're interested in. We appreciate your feedback and your reviews. Until next time, remember, you are worthy, you are worth it, you are enough.